On this week's Political Figure episode, we got the folks running for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Again, Wisconsin likes making its Supreme Court races a big deal. They've got a long history of making everything that they do in their court the rest of the country's problem. And thankfully, the last Wisconsin Supreme Court race, which was like a year ago, saw somebody elected to it who wasn't a fascist lunatic, giving people who aren't fascist lunatics a one-seat majority on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. But on April 1st, that could change, because once again, Wisconsin has another fascist lunatic running for the cheesiest court in the country. But they also have somebody who's not a fascist lunatic running, so if things go right, things in Wisconsin could stay more or less the same. Now, Wisconsin Supreme Court races are supposed to be nonpartisan, which means every election you've got one nonpartisan candidate and a Republican, because Republicans never follow the fucking rules. So our nonpartisan candidate, who's following the fucking rules, was born in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin in 1965, graduated from Chippewa Falls High School, went to Lawrence University to get her bachelor's in Appleton, Wisconsin, and then she went on and got her master's from Indiana University before going on to the University of Iowa School of Law to get her Juris Doctor. After she was admitted to the bar, she went on to work for the Criminal Court of Appeals in Iowa, and then was later hired to a similar position in Wisconsin. Then she worked as a deputy secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Employment Relations. Then she became the executive assistant in the Wisconsin Department of Corrections. After that, she oversaw the Division of Enforcement and Science for the Wisconsin DNR. She did a few years in private practice before running to become a Wisconsin Circuit Court judge in 2018. And she's been reelected to that position multiple times until she's decided to run for the Wisconsin Supreme Court this year. You know, just a normal, boring resume, which seems really not normal in 2025. You know, no crazy controversies, no insanely batshit statements. She's not giving us any reason to believe that she would be in a cult. As far as we can tell, she hasn't been purchased by Russia. Just a really boring, normal, qualified, nonpartisan candidate. And then there's her opponent. Brad Schimel, I don't know, something like that, born February 18th, 1965 in Muskowonga, Wisconsin or something. Mukwonago. I don't know if that's right either, but that's phonetically what it looks like to me. He would go on to get his bachelor's and his Juris Doctor from the University of Wisconsin, and then would immediately start his career as a prosecutor. In this position, he spent most of his time just standing up for child molesters, downplaying their crimes, reducing their sentences, and softening the language used to talk about their crimes. He also blamed the survivors of childhood sexual assault on the children who got assaulted, saying that they only got assaulted because of their own bad judgment. After working hard to make sure that local child molesters and rapists were properly protected from being victimized by the victims of sexual assault that they victimized, he went on to Attorney General, where he took his defense of kitty diddlers to the next level by making sure that rape kits couldn't get tested. Under his leadership, Wisconsin had a backlog of up to almost 7,000 untested sexual assault kits. It was so bad that Wisconsin gave him a grant for $4 million to fix the issue, and then they followed up with him, and he's like, oh yeah, we've tested hundreds of them with this grant money, and then 2 days after he said that, it came out that he had only tested 9. It took mounting pressure 3 years and nearly $7 million in grant funding before he finally came through and got the majority of them tested. Also, that Supreme Court case that allows gerrymandering everywhere, yeah, he was responsible for that during his tenure as Attorney General as well. See, a Wisconsin judge ruled that Republicans' gerrymandering was illegal. So Schmiegel, or whatever the fuck that kitty diddler's name is, do I have proof that he's a kitty diddler? Technically, no. But I'm also 103% sure that anybody who would spend that much of their career going that far out of their way to defend child molesters and rapists while victim-blaming children is only doing it because they are, in fact, a child molester and or rapist. But anyway, that kitty diddling Attorney General got really worried that they couldn't gerrymander anymore, so he's the one who personally appealed that all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, where it got overturned. So this motherfucker is literally personally responsible for gerrymandering in your state right now. Well, it turns out that defending kitty diddling and gerrymandering makes you kinda unpopular, and in 2018, he lost his bid for re-election. And then Scott Walker, Wisconsin's Republican governor, also lost his bid for re-election that year, and Republicans, never willing to let a worthless piece of shit go to waste, appointed whatever the fuck his name is to be a state judge. He did that despite there being 13 other applicants in front of Brad, and Brad never actually putting in a formal application as far as we can tell. His time as a state judge was roiled with controversy as well. Once again, judgeships are supposed to be a nonpartisan position in Wisconsin, and he spent all of his time doing partisan shit. He's attended and spoken at multiple fundraisers for Donald Trump and other Republicans. He also attended Trump rallies, and then his defense for both of those things was like, oh, I didn't attend as a judge, I attended as a private citizen and a Trump supporter. Like, that's not how that fucking works, bud. Which means he is openly a Republican supporting Trump supporter, which is, again, partisan. He also literally got barred from overseeing hearings by the Wisconsin judicial system because he refused to comply with a court order to wear a mask in court, which was a legal ruling. The person who is supposed to be the representation of upholding the law, the judge, couldn't even be bothered to obey the law while doing judge shit in a court of law. He was crying about how he had chronic sinus problems and it was too hard for him to breathe through a little mask. And then after he got banned and he was really upset and wanted to go back to work, he's like, okay, I guess I'll wear the mask. So apparently they weren't that chronic. Anyway, now little bitch Brad thinks that he should be elected to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And once again, even though this is supposed to be a nonpartisan election and a nonpartisan position, he's already been endorsed by President Musk, who is throwing millions of dollars behind his campaign. So even if Brad wasn't a kitty-diddling, gerrymandering piece of shit, just the fact that Elon's willing to spend millions of dollars to get him elected means that we should really not want him to be elected to anything, ever. Although, to be fair, Elon does seem to love kitty-diddling, gerrymandering pieces of shit, so that's probably why he's throwing so much money behind his election. But whatever, pick any reason you want to hate him. The list is long. It doesn't really matter. The only thing we need to know is him getting elected is bad. He is militantly anti-women's bodily autonomy. He worked as an attorney general suing the federal government to try to overturn healthcare access to millions of Americans. He has worked tirelessly to dismantle democracy and promote gerrymandering. And Elon is so far up his ass you can smell the musk coming out of his mouth. Now, the election is April 1st, and if you live in Wisconsin, make sure you fucking vote, because it is creeping up quick. If you don't live in Wisconsin and you want to help, which you should, you can go to Susan Crawford's campaign page and you can donate or volunteer there. Because if she doesn't win, then Brad will be deciding on things that affect you whether you live in Wisconsin or not, and we have already seen that he doesn't make very good decisions.